Agriculture and irrigation. Many of the achievements of the Cholas were made possible through new developments in agriculture. Look at map 2 again. Notice that the river Kaveri branches off into several small channels before emptying into the Bay of Bengal. These channels overflow frequently, depositing fertile soil on their banks. Water from the channels also provides the necessary moisture for agriculture, particularly the cultivation of rice. Although agriculture had developed earlier in other parts of Tamil Nadu, it was only from the 5th or 6th century that this area was opened up for long scale cultivation. Forests had to be cleared in some regions, land had to be revealed in other areas. In the delta regions, embankments had to be built to prevent flooding, and canals had to be constructed to carry water to the field. In many areas, two crops were grown in a year. In many cases, it was necessary to water crops artificially. A variety of methods were used for irrigation. In some areas, wells were dug. In other places, huge tanks were constructed to collect rainwater. Remember that irrigation work requires planning, organizing labor and resources, maintaining these work, and deciding on how water is to be shared. Most of the new rulers, as well as people living in villages, took an active interest in these activities and administrations of the empire. How was the administrations organized? Settlements of peasants known as becomes prosperous with the spread of irrigations. Agriculture groups of such villages formed larger unit called Nadu. The village council and the Nadu performed several administrative functions, including dispensing justice and collecting taxes. Rich peasants of the Velas caste exercised considerable control over the affairs of the Nadu under the supervision of the central Chola government. The Chola kings gave some rich landowners titles like Mevendalam, a Valan or peasant serving three kings, Rayar, chief, etc., as markers of respect, and entrusted them with important offices of the state of the center. Types of land. Chola inscriptions mention several categories of land. Vagi, the land of non-Brahmana peasant proprietors. Brahmadev, land gifted to Brahmanas. Sahal Bhaga, land of maintenance of school. Devadana, Tirunamattu Kanni, land gifted to temples. Palikam Nandan, land donated to Jain institutions. We have seen the Brahmanas often received land grant of our Brahmadeyas. As a result, a large number of Brahmanas settlements emerged in the Kaveri Valley as in the other part of South India. Each Brahmandeya was looked after by the assembly Asava of prominent Brahmana landholders. These assemblies worked very efficiently. Their decisions were recorded in detail in inscriptions, often on the stone walls on temples. Association of traders known as Nagrams also occasionally performed administrative functions in towns. Inscriptions from Atranimur in Chengalpat district, Tamil Nadu provide detail of the way in which the Sabha was organized. The Sabha had a separate committee to look after irrigations, work gardens, temples, etc. Names of these eligible to be members of these committees were written on small tickets of palm leaf. These tickets were put into an earthenware pot, from which a young boy was asked to take out the tickets one by one for each committee. Inscriptions and texts. Who could be a member of a Shava? The Uttaramanor inscriptions lays down all those who wish to become member of the Sabha should be owner of land from which land revenue is collected. They should have their own homes. They should be between 35 and 70 years of age. They should have knowledge of the Vedas. They should be well versed in administrative matters and honest. If anyone has been a member of any committee in the last 3 years, he cannot become a member of another committee. Anyone who has not submitted his account and those of his relatives cannot contest the elections. While inscriptions tell us about kings and powerful men, here is an export from the Periyapuram, a 12th century Tamil work which informs us about the lives of ordinary men and women. On the outskirts of Adanur was a small hamlet of Pulyas, a name used for a social group considered outcast by Brahmanas and villas studded with small huts under old thatches and inhabited by agrarian laborers engaged in manual occupations. In the thresholds of the huts, covered with strips of leather, little chickens moved about in groups. Dark children who were mm, bracelet of black iron were prancing about carrying little puppies in the shade of the Mudra Arjuna trees. A female laborer put her baby to sleep on a sheet of leather. There was a mango tree from whose branches drums were hanging, and other the coconut palms in the little hollows on the ground. Tiny headed witches lay after whelping. The red crested cocks crowed before dawn, calling the brownie plural to their day and by day. Under the shade of the kanji tree spread the voice of the wavy haired Pulaya's women singing as they were husking paddy. China under the Tang dynasty. In China, an empire was established under the Tang dynasty, which remained in power for about 300 years, from the 7th to the 10th centuries. Its capital, Xi'an, was one of the largest cities in the world, visited by Turks, Iranians, Indians, Japanese, and Koreans. The Tang Empire was administered by a bureaucracy recruited through an examination which was open to all who wished to appear for it. This system of selecting officials remained in place with some charges till 1911. In what ways was this system different from those prevalent in the Indian subcontinent? Imagine you are present in an election for a Sabha. Describe what you see and hear. Thank you.